For centuries, knowledge has been hidden in plain sight across the sands of time. Whispers of lost civilizations, cryptic symbols, and forbidden histories have been erased or concealed. What if the truth was never lost, but hidden? Welcome to Eye of Ancient Mysteries, where the past speaks and the future listens. Sit back, open your mind, and prepare to uncover the untold secrets of our world. Let the journey begin now. What was life expectancy in antiquity? For many years, we were led to believe that in ancient times a person at the age of 30 was already considered an old man, and that life expectancy was almost half of what it is today. Modern research shows that this is a misconception, the result of misinterpreting statistics. Here we will tell you how long people actually lived in antiquity and where the idea of the short lives of our ancestors comes from. When we hear about average life expectancy, we often misunderstand the term. In fact, it refers to life expectancy at birth, which cannot accurately reflect how long people lived in past eras. What was life expectancy in the Stone Age? It all comes down to high infant mortality, which claimed many lives even in the first half of the 20th century. This alone skews the general life expectancy, making it appear alarmingly low. Scientists say that in the Paleolithic era, the average life expectancy was 20 years. But does this mean that a man of the Stone Age at 20 years old was a frail old man standing at the edge of eternity? Of course not. Again, the matter is explained by the very high infant mortality during the first years of life. Once a child reached the age of 5, they could expect to live at least another 35 years. Paleoanthropologist Eric Trinkaus studied the remains of people from the Paleolithic and found that most belonged to men and women who lived between 20 and 40 years. At the same time, about a quarter of them lived beyond 40 years. Interestingly, Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons died at roughly the same age. Scientists have found that even 40 years was not a limit for people of the Middle Paleolithic. Many could live much longer, but older people found it difficult to adapt to the constant need for food gathering. The remains of elderly individuals are often found in camps, suggesting that they were simply abandoned by their younger tribesmen and died of hunger or fell prey to predators. It may seem incredible, but modern-day hunter-gatherer tribes living in remote parts of the world have lifespans no shorter than the average European, despite harsh living conditions and lack of medicine. Anthropologists Michael Gervin and Hillard Kaplan spent much time studying the Hiwi, Venezuela and Colombia, Yanomamo, Brazil, and Hadza, Tanzania. These people lack even clothes and primitive tools, yet live long lives. The Pakistani Hunza tribe, living in very Spartan conditions, is famous for its elders reaching 120 years of age. At birth, the life expectancy of members of these tribes does not exceed 35 years, again due to high infant mortality. But if they survive to the age of 3, they have an excellent chance of reaching old age and living at least 70 years. In today's modern world, infant mortality is no more than 1%. Yet not everyone lives to 70. Ancient centenarians for most ancient civilizations Life expectancy at birth was also about 30 years. In ancient Rome, Greece, and Egypt, at least 30% of children died within their first year of life. A citizen of Rome, Athens, or Corinth who reached the age of 15 could expect to live another 40 or more years. Yes, these are averages, and there is every reason to believe that wealthy people of the time lived even longer. The mummy of Ramesses Sibu. The ancient Egyptians, who loved accounting and orderly record-keeping, left plenty of documentary evidence about the lifespan of their pharaohs. From their sources, we know that Pepi-Tupa Neferkare of the 6th dynasty died at 68, Thutmose III of the 18th dynasty lived 56 years, and Ramesses Secular of the 19th dynasty passed away at 90. One could assume that the Egyptian scribes exaggerated, but this information is confirmed by modern researchers. Professor Michael Zimmerman of the University of Manchester performed autopsies on over 300 Egyptian mummies from different eras and concluded that many of his patients had died between the ages of 80 and 90. Moreover, they suffered from a solid range of illnesses such as diabetes, arthritis, and osteoporosis. Military sources also confirm the high life expectancy of the ancient world. In ancient Greece, men between 18 and 60 years of age were called to war, which means that even in their 7th decade, Greeks were strong enough to wield sword and shield, ride horses, and march long distances on foot. Socrates was executed at 70. There were also many long-lived famous figures in ancient Greece. Pythagoras died at 75, Hippocrates, Democritus, and Sophocles lived to 90, and Xenophanes reached about 95. In Rome, things were no worse. The first emperor Augustus lived to 75, and his successor Tiberius to 77. Tacitus suspected, however, that Tiberius had not died entirely of natural causes, but had been poisoned or strangled to make way for Caligula. Longevity in the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages, relatively close to us in time, provide a huge amount of information about human life. Archaeologist Christine Cave of the Australian National University carefully studied the lifespan and causes of death of people who lived in the early medieval period. In addition to written notes, Cave examined remains from 3 English cemeteries dated 475–625 AD, using a new method for determining age based on tooth wear. She found that many of those buried there had passed the age of 70. Among medieval English nobles, there were many long-lived individuals. In the 13th century, an aristocrat who reached 21 could expect to live another 43 years on average. But in the 14th century, that number dropped sharply to 24.5 years due to the arrival of the Black Death in Europe. In the 15th century, a relatively prosperous period regarding epidemics, a young man at 15 could expect another 48 years of life. Thus, medieval aristocrats lived an average of 70 years. Commoners lived somewhat shorter lives than nobles, but the difference was likely not very large. Survival in the early years was the key. As in Antiquity, up to 30% of babies in medieval Europe died. In 13th century England, 650 out of 1,000 children survived to the age of 10, 550 to the age of 30, and 300 to the age of 50. Around 70 out of 1,000 lived to 75 or older. A very good figure. It turns out that across all eras, people lived fairly long lives, not only among the elite, but also among ordinary folk. Once childhood was survived, the chances of reaching old age were quite high.